Okay, now we have a double bill of what the hell is this? Two for the price of one, a Russell Crowe double bill of horror movies that he has been in the last 5 years. I think they deserved to go together. And this is The Pope's Exorcist, which has been out this year, and The Mummy, which he was a supporting part in, but a big supporting part because he was meant to be the central character in the Dark Universe, which did not succeed because The Mummy bombed massively. And so he was playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in that film. And the interesting thing before we get into individual films is Crow understands these horror movies in a sense of he understands how to perform in them. Like he knows he's obviously seen some good Hammer films. He knows how to do the Peter Cushing exposition scene of nonsense and make it sound believable. Like he's obviously watched these films and understands the way to do that. And he also understands that these films can be silly, so you need to put in some humor, a sense of the fact that it's absurd, but we're going to take it seriously. And it's just a sense that he understands what film he's in. He understands the style of the film. He understands exactly what kind of hokum he's in. So basically, in both these films, he's the best part of the films. By a mile. Both films by a mile. He's the only one in The Mummy who seems to know what film he's in. And in Pope's Exorcist, he's the kind of person who's keeping it going throughout. I'll start with Pope's Exorcist, actually. It's the more recent one. And it was my initial plan was to do this one, then I've rewatched The Mummy for a laugh, and I thought it has to be double bill. I'll start with Pope's Exorcist, which is basically The Exorcist, but the guy doing the exorcism is an expert from the Pope who believes in the old-fashioned ways. He's based on a real guy who was controversial, so we basically this film would probably horrify the person it's based on. It's the best way to put it. I'm pretty sure the church was not happy with this film. It does make everything seem absurd. It does have like really bizarre bits of plot. It's really stupid, is the best way to put it. But gloriously so. It was directed by Julius Avery, who also did Overlord, which was a fun monster movie set in the World War II a few years ago. And, there's another one where the director understood he was making hokum. And this film is kind of badly written, but the direction has enough gusto in the sense of he's pushing it forward as fast as he can to get to the stuff you want. And it's a director who understands that he's working with a dodgy script. And he's going to go as fast as possible and try and do it as stylish as possible. And basically, whenever Russell Crowe's on stage, just hands the film over to him to do what he does. It's that kind of thing of Crowe knows what he's doing, and the director understands that. Just let Russell Crowe be in the center of the film and just stay the way when he's on screen. So it's one of those films it's got a really overblown score, which happens in these horror films. I have a feeling that people in the studios who don't understand horror films just always go for the big score to try and people with all the cracks is the best way to put it. So this film has all that stuff where you get overblown score, and some scenes that would have worked a lot better without score has like the whole orchestra going, and it's like these people don't understand creepy. But the director seems to understand that like this is a throw everything on the screen type of movie. It's absurd. So unlike something like The Haunting remake, where the people that probably thought they were making a good film, this one, you get the feeling the director knew he was making a trashy B movie that you watch like half of it at night with a beer. He understands what he's making. He's making B movie trash. That's again, you can't really go against the film that much because it's like, yeah, they know exactly what they're doing. You kind of get the feel in this film people are cracking up a lot. what they're doing in the film. You get that energy from the film. They understand. Like Russell Crowe goes through Bruce Campbell in a way because he understands it's absurd and let's play into it. So even though he does a bit of Peter Cushing, just a bit of Bruce Campbell in the sense of he understands what he's in. He understands how absurd it is. The other performances in the film, well, Franco Nero's the Pope, which is funny seeing Django as the Pope. And he's fun. But Franco Nero's always fun. The rest of the performances are all mediocre. And that's nothing against the actors. It's just that they're not given much. They're given very basic stuff. And they're in a film that is knowingly absurd. So it's a film where, like, a decent actor would know, let's not go for the Oscar for this one. Let's do a genre film. Let's just do it. So the weakest performances are the two kids, the kid and the teenager. The teenage girl's fine. She's not given much to do, but she's fine. The little boy who's possessed, not so much. He's not convincing as the possessed boy. He just is with the crazy voice and things like that. There's the adult voice doing voiceover for him. He doesn't work. His face looks like he's trying too hard. But again, because kind of movie it is, it's kind of absurd, so it doesn't really matter so much. You're not really looking for emotional investment here because the film goes so fast through all the different rote exorcism scenes anyway. So they know, like, we cannot build fear this way. We're going too fast. So let's just make it broad, let's make it cartoonish and get to the gore later on. That's what they're going for. But the film seems honest about it and is straight up about it. It's like, don't go for emotional investment in this film. It's not there. The emotional investment is you're watching Russell Crowe chew the scenery and be on a scooter playing this eccentric priest who's also an exorcist, who's fighting the devil and who says some of the most absurd dialogue ever with a straight face. That's the joy of the film, is this anytime Russell Crowe's saying something insane and with a straight face. That's what you're really there for. Now there's different Exorcist films where they steal different things from. Right, it's almost like Spot the Exorcist rip-off. Because I didn't see anything from Exorcist 2, but the rest of them I saw bits from. So the Exorcist, the original, you get the idea of a family with a possessed child. The mother's going spare. Of course, this time there's two young people rather than just one. The possessed person's a boy, as it was in Dominion, the Paul Schrader one. There's more from Dominion coming later. There's just the general setup, the general first half of the film compresses the first half of Exorcist into like what feels like 4 scenes. Really, that's what it feels like. It's just like compress. Very ridiculous, but it's kind of enjoyable to watch. Then they kind of go their own way, but there's always the echo of the Exorcist all the way through as they're trying to stop this possessed child whose body can't take much more of it. So there's a ticking clock, which there is a bit of an Exorcist as well, but this one amps it up to be a kind of movie absurd level of we've just met the boy, we've only got about 12 hours to save his life type of thing. It's that kind of stupid plot. Then we've got from the Exorcist 3, you've got the multiple possessions. Now, Exorcist 3 had characters possessed, so not just one, there was multiple possessions throughout. That was a scare. This one, it's not scary at all with multiple possessions because it's been done so many times and demons and everything else. It's been done so many times now that it's not scary at all. But it's definitely from Exorcist 3, the multiple possessions thing, and hearing them do it is just funny. It feels like Evil Dead rip-off more than anything else. But they go for it though. So it's ridiculous, it's stupid, but they go for it. Plus you have a lot of old guys yapping a lot. And there's lots of like basically Catholic office politics from the first Exorcist and the third one, which you see through this one as well. But of course, in this case, they're trying to get Russell Crowe's character thrown out of the Vatican. So there's that. There's from Exorcist Dominion, there's not just the boy being possessed, but there's also the idea of this old church below an existing building, which was where the evil lay. Now the evil's out. You have to destroy the demon. You have to find a way to defeat the demon. And you've got a priest who has a history in World War II that's haunting him, that's making him very hard for him to do his job. So there's lots of Dominion in this film, but Dominion's a lot better film than this. So lots of stuff like that. There's some ridiculous things about Spanish Inquisition being the work of the devil, not the church, because the devil possessed a priest who made them go towards doing the Spanish Inquisition. It's like, that's really stupid. I can't believe you actually put that in the film. But hey, it's another one to watch Russell Crowe trying to deliver lines where it's really stupid. So his delivery makes it worth watching, even though it's really stupid. The whole film has that kind of wonderful trashy feel. I mean, this is a film, if you hate it, I'll understand it completely. Because it's not a good film, but it's a film made by people who knew they were making a trashy horror film. Maybe some of them deluded themselves, but I have a feeling that somewhere in the film, everyone kind of figured it out. You know, like even if they started off, I mean, with the best intentions, fairly early on, some people had figured out we're making trash here. We're making a really trashy film. And they went with it, and it's fun. It's a big, stupid film. The ending's moronic, but in a good way, because you're just like, people are doing the stupidest stuff, and there's so much gore and idiocy throughout it, and it's just like, I had a really good time watching this stupid film. So that's the one end of the Russell Crowe, what the hell is this? A film that's objectively stupid but enjoyable. Then we have The Mummy, a film that's objectively stupid and really bad. I'm not sure I've ever covered this film before. I think when I saw it, because I'm a sucker for like old Egyptian stuff, I wasn't that hard on it. But watching it again, it's like, whoa, this film was really bad. So it's a film with so much exposition that it's actually choking exposition. It's a notoriously troubled production where they were rewriting the film well into production, and even then they couldn't do much with it because you get a feeling that everyone was making a different film and no one really had a clue what film they were actually making. And it was like, there were rumors like Cruise was trying to salvage it throughout. The director was Alex Kurtzman, who has done lots of bad films and bad TV, is the best way to put it. He was brought into Star Trek to reboot it. Now, Star Trek, the first Star Trek of the Chris Pine era was fun, and the third one, which Kurtzman had nothing to do with, was fun. But he also wrote the second one, which was a terrible film. I think he'd written Legend of Zorro, which is a terrible film. He's done all these new Star Trek TV shows, which are terrible. And he's got a reputation of being someone who can ruin anything. And nothing dumps his reputation more than this film. This is a film that, it's a horror film. You're meant to be, and I tried to make a darker horror film with some action in it. But every time you get anything close to atmosphere, they add exposition and more exposition and more exposition. So by the time you've actually met the Tom Cruise character in the film, which comes like 10 minutes in, you've already had a massive exposition dump before you even meet him. And explaining the whole thing about who the mummy is. Slight problem, because they spend the next 20-25 minutes trying to set up the mystery of the mummy after that, but they've already told people what the mummy is. So you've all these scenes of going through tombs and things like that. And it's like, well, we already know where they're going. It's like, why do you put that in that actually would explain away anything you want to know now has been told to you, and then you have to follow the the line of people try to figure it out, and it's like, well, that's stupid script writing. And it's so obvious that it should have come in the middle. There's a scene in the middle dedicated to talking about the mummy again, and you're like, oh god, not this again. And it's like, because obviously this sequence early on should have been there. There'd been a lot more sense to have it there, but no, it starts at the beginning. There's a sequence where they're establishing these Templar Knights, and then you jump 500 years to the same location everyone's rotted, and it's like, you didn't need to establish the Knights. All you need to do is establish that location and do the rest of the flashback later, and everything fine. But that's the typical of the film, is it's so intent establishing stuff that doesn't matter, that you can infer quite easily. And there's the whole first 10 minutes you don't need to see. You literally could just move all that stuff later in the film, or even cut it out and just have someone mention it, and you'd be better off. There's a whole female mummy thing that is basically ignored because the character ultimately just becomes like a thug for the main mummy who you never see. So it becomes an unsatisfying character who doesn't have any real purpose beyond being a scare tactic once in a while. And she doesn't do that well. Even though the actress is good, there's only so much anyone can do if the director's messing up the film. That's the best way to put it. The director can direct to save his life. No actor can save him. This film was badly directed. It's just scene after scene of exposition where all you had to do was not say anything and have some atmosphere, and you'd have been fine. This film is so bad at the horror that during the introduction to the villain, when she's finally reborn into the West world, which comes a bit almost halfway through, where they're doing where this thing's coming back to life. It's very much a Hellraiser rip-off sequence. I mean, basically, Frank coming back from the death from Hellraiser with the most generic music, which does not sell the villain as scary at all. They have like plot points of why something happened here or there that is obscured by just not having a few shots would have explained it a lot easier and would have been used to add suspense. Because it's just a simple thing of us being aware of something, like the reason the plane, there a plane crash early on, where the plane crashes in southern England, and then it turns out the plane was drawn near by something supernatural. A simple shot or two suggesting that early on would have added a lot more tension to the next 25 minutes of the film. And they don't do it. And this is the coherent part of the film I'm talking about. This isn't even the second half where it all goes to hell. This is like the point where the film's not fully gone to hell yet. And it's so full of exposition and stuff you don't need, and they just have like atmosphere scenes. I mean, you can see the actors trying their damnedest to make this work. But there's a problem is every character is unsympathetic at best, horrible at worst. The crew's characters is meant to be a charming rogue, but he just comes across as a horrible, horrible person throughout the film. The lead actress, she has nothing to work with. It's one of those things where I cannot blame the actress. She had nothing. She had nothing but exposition, terrible exposition at that. And being crossed at the Tom Cruise character. For good reason, mostly. So the first half of the movie is they're in Iraq. They find a mummy's tomb that shouldn't be in Iraq, but is. Then they end up in Britain because for some reason they don't ever explain that they take this on a plane and they travel back from Iraq to Britain. I have no idea why, because they were meant to be stationed still in Iraq. Never explains this in any way that clicks to the audience. Like, what's going on? It's just vague. It feels very vague. And then you go to Southern England for a while, and you have some scenes around churches and things that could have worked with a decent director who wasn't scared of having the camera stay still for a little bit and build atmosphere and things like that. But like this film is a rubbish version of Life Force, and Life Force is really eccentric. But this is like, what if Life Force was really unwatchable? This is the film. So you've got all this stuff happening. Then you go to then halfway through, Cruz is taken to this underground facility led by Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And Crowe has even more exposition because he's a guy who knows everything because he's the leader of this facility who's cursed with Dr. Mr. Hyde, always preying on him. And he's trying to stop evil wherever he can. And it's more and more exposition. And now that's a sequence you don't need at all because it'd be scarier if Cruz is trying to figure it out himself and would have to do some actual detective work, which might make you like the character. Instead, he's told everything in an exposition scene. The good thing with this is it's got Russell Crowe in it because he knows what film he's in. He's in a trashy Hollywood blockbuster. And he's having fun, no matter what ridiculous dialogue he's got, no matter the film collapsing all around him. He's picking up his paycheck and he's going to have some fun on set. Seems to be his motto. And whenever he's involved in the scene, you can have some fun with him because he's enjoying hamming it up. But then you get more exposition, and Jake Johnson turns up every so often as the zombie ghost of his best friend, who's his best friend who died earlier on in the film, which is very American from London. Because Johnson's fun, you don't mind him showing up. You wish he'd shown up more times. It would have helped the film a lot. Of course, there's an escape, or the mummy escapes. The mummy gets caught by these people, and it escapes, and then it's going to go into the underground to find this thing and then it's Cruz's cursed, so he's going to stab this knife into Cruz. He's going to be reborn as basically the Egyptian version of the devil. And then that happens, and then he comes back as a superhero mummy instead, for reasons. I gave up trying to follow this film. Now, apparently, I mean, this is the kind of the film that basically Cruz is having a very good run until this film. And he's working a lot with Chris McQuarrie, who had rewritten some of the Mission Impossible and was directing them. We did Jack Reacher with him. Did Live, Die, Repeat. Did a bunch of films that were doing well. And we'd go on to do other films. But this one dropped dead. And they brought McQuarrie in, as well as Dylan Cussman, who helped them on one of the Mission Impossibles. And the film just... they couldn't save it. Because they're trying to save a film that doesn't hang together. All it's got it really is a lack of understanding of how to do horror and exposition scenes. And there's only so much you can do with that. And apparently they were trying their best to think of some ways to do it to make it more interesting, to have a kind of story progression, because this is just scenes that happen. There's no story here that you can really follow. It's just scenes and twists for twist's sake that don't actually land because there's nothing solid below the feet of the film to actually make anything land. So it's just a terrible film. Apparently they wanted to turn Cruz into the mummy a lot earlier just to have something interesting happen, and they weren't allowed to do that because the studio was trying to build a big universe and try to survive this film. And it wasn't happening. And apparently there was so many conflicting opinions of what it should be that the film couldn't survive on its own. So it's just an abomination. But it's an abomination, but it's one of those films that's interesting to watch to see how you don't do a blockbuster. The one you have to have an actual story that actually you can follow. You have to plan it out so that you don't have to have tons of exposition. And this film just it feels that every minute, even when you've got an action scene, there's things happening you need to know. So you need to take your attention away from the action scene to think of, what does this mean now? And it's just like non-stop, and you can sense them trying to throw some of this nonsense in quick while something else is happening just so that you get it over with. Because this film is a feeling of people saying, look, let's just do damage control as much as we can, because the director's already screwed it up. Let's damage control as much as we can to make it kind of watchable. That's what the film feels like. And it's just terrible. I mean, the ending I gave up trying to figure out. I just gave up. The scenes of the mummy going through the streets of London, smashing things up, and this big cloud of dust that's meant to be impressive, but it's just like, seen it. The whole film's just like, I've seen it, I suppose. Oh well. So that was a utter disaster. But if you want a total disaster of a film, this is it. This is one of the films that is. It's definitely one of the worst films, worst major blockbusters of the century. Really, it really is. It's just one of those things. And it gets that thing by having lots of talented people involved, but having someone in charge as director who doesn't know what they're doing. It's like it's really weird. You can pretty much blame one person for the insanity of how terrible it is because everyone else involved are never this bad usually. And the one person who is this bad usually is the director. So it's like a sign like, I think he may have messed this up. I think he's to blame. So yeah, that was quite an interesting one to see. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with another one. But that's me for now. Bye.